Hey guys, back again. The problems that I'm talking about are the ones where they ask you to either write an equation or an expression. And again, remember from our last video that an equation has an equal sign in it, some numbers and letters. An expression has no equal sign. All right, so sometimes they might ask you to write something with an equal sign, and they would say, whoops, yeah. Sometimes they would ask you to write something with an equal sign, that would be an equation, and other times they might say write an expression, and that would have no equal sign in it. All right, so that relates to problems 48, 50, 51, and 53. So our first one says James has 29 Pokemon cards. Mike has 18 cards less than James. Write an equation to find M, the number of cards that Mike has. All right, so when I read this, I see some important things here. Actually, one major thing, that Mike has 18 cards less than James. All right. So when I do this, the first thing I think, even if I have no idea how to do the problem, I can think if I had to compare Mike and James, or the amount that Mike and James has, I would ask myself, who has more? All right. So think about that for just a second. All right, hopefully you thought that James has more than Mike, because it says that Mike has 18 cards less than James. So James is a higher amount than Mike. So if you have no idea how to do this problem, go through and see if you can find ones where it shows that Mike's is less than James. So the M again stands for how many Mike has, and this would be how many we would do to find that. If we said Mike has 29 plus 18, that is 47 cards. Is that less than James has? No, it's not. So this can't possibly be it. It's more than James has, because James has 29. All right, let's look at this one. 29 times 18, I don't even know what that is. That's about 30 times 20. That's about 600 cards. It's less than 600, but about that. Is that less than James has? No, that's way more. So it can't be this. All right. So right away, you've crossed out half of the answers. So even if you're just guessing, you're much more likely to pick a correct one if you just pick those two. So right off the bat, get rid of some bad choices there. Okay, so then we have to decide, is it going to be, do we subtract 18 from 29, or do we divide 29 by 18? Again, this is another way to write 29 divided by 18. A lot of times we see it like this. More recently, we're seeing it like this as a mixed number, or I'm sorry, as an improper fraction, but it still means divide. So if you see that, just remember it means divided by. All right, so then which one is it? Is it C, where we subtract, or is it D, where we divide? And hopefully from your real life, you think about that and you realize that less than tends to mean we're decreasing something through subtraction, you know. So the correct choice would be C here, that we would take James's amount and subtract 18 to find Mike's, all right? Because Mike has 18 less than James. All right, so if we say that this is James's amount right here, and that Mike has 18 less than James, then that would give us the answer. All right, so get rid of ones that don't make any sense, and then choose from the remaining ones which one does make the most sense. All right, part 2, or problem 2. Sophie has 42 pieces of candy. This is 6 times as many pieces as Jane has. Write an equation to find J, which is the number of pieces of candy that Jane has. All right, so again, if I'm comparing Sophie and Jane, and I want to know who has more and who has less, I think about, all right, well, Sophie has 42 pieces. This is 6 times as many pieces as Jane has. So when I think about this, I think Sophie is up here and Jane is down here, that Jane has less than Sophie does. All right, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to get rid of the ones that would not do that for me, that would not make Jane have less than Sophie or Sophie more than Jane. All right, so here, if I take 42 minus 6, will that give me less than Sophie has? Yes, that's a possibility, so let's leave that in. For part B, 42 times 6, again, I'm just estimating, but that's going to be about 240 pieces. That can't be right, that Jane would have 240 pieces, since I already think that she has less than Sophie. So cross that one out. That's not a good choice. This one says 42 divided by 6. Again, for right now, most of what we know, dividing makes smaller, so this would say that Jane has a smaller amount than Sophie has, so let's leave that one in. And then the last choice is Jane has 42 plus 6, right? That's 48. That gives me more than Sophie has, and we already think that Jane should have less than Sophie. So this one is also not a good choice. All right, so then we have to decide between these two, which one is it? Is it going to be 42 minus 6 or 42 divided by 6? And again, we go back to the problem to figure that out. And again, we see this right here, that Sophie has 6 times as many pieces as Jane. All right, so if we know that Sophie has 6 times as many pieces as Jane, the other way we could think of that is that that Jane has a sixth of what Sophie has. All right, so if we're saying that, let me write it here, Sophie has, or is equal to, Sophie's amount is equal to 6 times what Jane has. I'm going to use a little dot for multiplication. The other way we could write that is to say that Jane is 1/6 of Sophie. Right? And if I write this like that, then that means that Sophie divided by 6 gives me Jane's amount. Or another way of saying that is Sophie divided by 6 is Jane's amount. And that is what we have in choice C right here. All right, so the correct answer would be C. But again, my favorite strategy in these is first just eliminating any that obviously don't make sense. So right here, we just crossed out half of our answers. And even if you have to guess, you've just increased your likelihood of getting the correct answer right there. All right, some things that I want to point out, some words that you're going to see in this type of problem. We've talked about these before, but again, I know that they're easy to forget because we don't see them all the time. But sum is the answer to an addition problem. Difference is the answer to a subtraction problem. Product is the answer to a multiplication problem. And quotient is the answer to a division problem. So sometimes they will use those words in their problems and they expect you to know what they are. And if you do, that will give you a big hint as to what type of equation or expression that you need to set up. Right? If it says find the quotient of m and 18, you would do m divided by 18. If they say find the product of m and 18, you would have to do m times 18. If they say find the difference of m and 18, you would have to do m minus 18. And if they say find the sum of m and 18, you would have to do m plus 18. So look for those words as clues to tell you what to do. The other thing that you're going to see is these hints, and we just saw some of them in our problems right here. More than often means addition. Depending on how they phrase it, you might not be able to do addition. It might say the person that you know has 6 more than the person that you don't know. And then in order to find the person that you don't know, you'd have to subtract. But it generally means, somebody has a greater amount through addition. Less than usually means that somebody has a smaller amount through subtraction. And then times, again, we use that word all the time instead of saying multiplication. But times does associate with multiplication. All right, so look for those words as you're doing those types of problems. Okay, good luck with them. Bye.